Hello. Thank you for joining us. It is now June 2020, so you are joining the June Quilt to Joy Clubhouse meeting, and we have a lot of great things planned for you today. So I'm just so thankful that you chose to spend a little time with us. We've been working hard to make this as action-packed and educational as we can so that you can get the most out of your time with us as possible. So other people are filing in. We have this live both on our YouTube channel, on the Quilt to Joy YouTube channel, as well as in our Facebook group, the Quilt to Joy Clubhouse there on Facebook. So I appreciate you joining us at either place, and if you would just over in the comments just put like what city you're in. It's always fun to see how far flung all of our viewers are. So we have folks in Australia and Spain and all over the place that join us here in our tiny little space here in Louisville, Kentucky. So it's always fun to see you guys online. So do we have people filing in, Rachel? Kansas, all right.
We have Peggy from Alabama.
Welcome, Peggy.
We have Mary from Nebraska.
Mary in Nebraska.
We have BJ from Arizona.
BJ from Arizona, all right. We are far and wide. Yeah, it's a little earlier in Arizona too, in the West Coast. So thanks for joining us. I would ask that if you are interested in the topics that we talk about, you're interested in machine quilting, you're interested in tutorials, you're interested in growing your skills, whether you have a sit-down machine or a stand-up machine, do join the Quilt to Joy newsletter, because anytime that we have a tutorial or a downloadable for you or any kind of activity or event or special or anything, we send those out twice a month, and we do not share your name with anyone, your email with anyone. We hate spam too. But sign up for the newsletter and you'll be alerted and reminded when we have our clubhouses and then any other information that we have for you that we think will help you on your machine quilting adventure. We share that there in the newsletter as well. We also put some pretty cool little links at the end of just, I don't know, groovy stuff that I found on the internet that I think is kind of cool, so I want to share it with you. So that's in our newsletter. And then I also want to tell you that we are going to be doing 2 classes online in July. So there's the APQS beginning long arm class. So that's actually meant for folks who just bought a long arm machine, and it's the class that comes with your purchase. So we normally do that here in the shop, and we do that every other month, but frankly, I can't talk through a mask for 6 hours or I would pass out. So we're gonna have to do that online until things kind of lift and things get back to a new normal, and we can kind of I can teach without a mask on, because I find it really, really hard to talk for an extended amount of time with it on. So on July the 24th, we will have our APQS beginning long arm class, and then on July the 25th, I teach an advanced beginner class. It is basically it's beginning custom, so beginning blocks, borders, corners, sashing. It picks up where the beginners class leaves off. So if you have an APQS machine, fabulous. If you don't, you can absolutely take this class, because the machine, there's a little bit of the first class, the beginner's class, that would apply specifically to an APQS machine, but for sure the advanced beginner class, it applies to any machine, sit down and stand up. So if you're interested in either of those classes, you can go to our website and get some more information, or give us a ring and talk to us about it, and we can get you signed up, or you can sign up there on our website at quiltedjoy.com. But if you know somebody who might benefit from one of those classes, let them know too, because they're very thorough, and people are always super happy with those 2 classes. So take a look at that. Okay, so our main program today is we're talking more about feathers. So we started off by talking about feather spines and the different types of feather spines. I think that was 4 months ago, if I'm remembering correctly. And then we talked about how to do feathers on the outside of a curve. That was a couple months ago. And then last month we did how to do feathers on the inside of a curve. And so talking about the principles of making a feather bend to a spine, because so many times you're taught initially how to do feathers, but it's on a straight line. And I mean, there's very few times that I've put a feather on a straight line. It's very boxy, and it doesn't have those organic curves, and it just doesn't have that look that I prefer with the curvy lines. So learning how to do feathers on a straight line is kind of a skill you're just not going to use. So it's better to do it on a spine. So let's look today, though, at putting feathers in a shape. So we looked at putting them on kind of an undulating line. But let's talk about when we have a barrier or a boundary that we need to keep our feathers within. So we're going to talk about putting feathers in a square. Now there's lots of ways to put a feather in a square. So we're just going to talk about a couple of my favorite ways here today. So I've got on my screen and what I've done is I've created that square. So that's that blue box, and then I've created some registration lines, and those are those red diagonals. And so what I'm doing is I'm giving myself a boundary, I'm giving myself a barrier to stay within so that it will help me keep these feathers more symmetrical and keep them the same. So I'm going to start down here in my lower left. You could start wherever you like. And I'm going to stay within this boundary area. So this is a triangle shape in my square. I've got 4 of them, and I'm going to stack my feathers. So I'm going to do a curled feather. So I curl in, I come back out, and when I reach kind of the apex of that curve, I'm going to kick out and do another plume. So it's a curled feather. So a curl, yeah, and then a feather. And I want to deliberately, you'll notice I'm not backtracking. I want to embrace that. I do not want to backtrack because that's where life gets hard when you backtrack. So always look forward, right? In life and quilting, don't look back. All right, and then we're going to do a curl and then a plume. And then when I get down here, I'm just going to kind of hop over to the next corner. And now I got to learn how to do them upside down. All right, so our sit-down friends, they can turn their quilts. But if you have a stand-up machine, you're going to need to figure out how to do many of your patterns right side up, upside down, north, south, east, west. All right, coming into this last little quadrant here, curl, bump, curl. And so by staying within the boundaries, and then here, I can get a feathered look inside my square and have it look nice. Okay, so let's be super critical, all right? I don't want you to do this of your stuff, but let's do it to my stuff because I can take it. Let's be super critical, and let me just start out by saying I quilt far better than I draw. So do you see how 3 of those, I feel like I'm on Sesame Street, 3 of those things, one of those things is not like the other. Do you see how the top triangle, that fat feather did not go all the way into the point of that triangle? It was kind of shy of going in the point of that triangle. So if I had been a little bigger and swung into that, I would have a much more symmetrical, much more balanced look. But I did not, because I was talking to you guys about drawing upside down. So so really kind of check yourself, but don't be super critical of yourself, and practice this in front of the TV. Get some squares on paper and just start doodling away. So let's look at another type of, another way to put feathers in a square. So I'm going to close that one out. And so here's the same square with the same red diagonal marks, but this time what I've done is I've put little arcs in each one. Now this would be better for a larger square that you're wanting to fill, because these arcs are my spines, and I'm going to put feathers on both sides of my spine, and I'm going to do it as a spineless feather, meaning I'm going to be doing both sides at a time, and I'm going to do it as a long arm feather. So a long arm feather, each plume is independent of every other plume, and so I'm working my way down the spine, and I'm dropping in and I might have to do a couple on one side and then not so many on the other to fill in the space. And then I'm going to cut down. And so the long arm feather, it's independent. It doesn't touch, you know how we did the curled feather? I'm going to do one more on this side. You know how we did that curled feather and we kind of curled in and then we came kind of back over the head of the feather until we could kind of kick out and make a new feather? So the long arm feather is just a little different in that each one is independent and it doesn't rely or really talk to the other feathers next to it. Now, this back and forth, this is a skill that I want you to play with, but don't be surprised if this skill doesn't come naturally to you. So if it doesn't, this back and forth business, then just do one side. Just do like the bottom side of the feathers of the spine, So here, let me just do the bottom. So just do the bottom all the way around the block. Right, so I go all the way around the block and then come back, and when you complete the block, now I can go back and I can do, I can do the top side of my spine and out. All right, so that wouldn't look right in like a 3-inch or 4-inch block because that would be way too much quilting, but it would be nice in like a 12-inch block. So play with that one again, play with it on paper, and let's look at one other one that would be more akin to, well, I say would be better choice for the smaller squares, because we've already said that would be way too busy for a small square. So this is a way to make a small square, a feather in a small square. So I've got my registration line here down the center of my block, and that's my spine. I have not stitched that. I'm just going to kind of work my way up it. So I've just got it marked, and let's do those curled feathers again. So I'm going to start on this side for this first one. So curl and kick out, and curl and kick out, and curl and kick out, and curl. And now when I get to here, I'm going to go up into the point of this diagonal, and then I'm going to come back down. You see how I'm making the terminal feather more of a leaf shape or of a diamond shape, and then I'm going to travel down my spine till I get to the bottom, and I'm going to work my way up this side. And so feathers, one of the things, so feathers are not a beginner thing. Like you aren't going to just pop out of bed one day and be the feather queen or king. You're going to need to doodle, doodle, doodle. So you got to find the feather plume that's friendly to you, and you got to doodle it. But don't be super critical of your doodle, because you know, again, let's be super critical of my doodle, and you can see that I am not symmetrical and I'm kind of shaky, but when I quilt it, it's going to be fine. So there's my feather, and again, as a beginner especially, I would always start from the bottom, bottom up, bottom up, bottom up, because trying to make them go from the top down is really, really, really hard. Okay, so let's take this to the machine. I have that first one, so I have a square stitched out, and I've got my diagonals marked with Sharpie. Now, I don't recommend that you use Sharpie on your quilts, right? But at least this way you can see what I'm doing. And Kelsey, should I keep it in stitch regulation mode? Or yeah, okay. Sometimes we put it in manual mode because it can, the camera can see it a little bit better. So let's go ahead and let's do our first curl. And our plume. And a curl. And a plume, and to the corner. Curl, and a plume, and a curl, and a plume, and out to the corner. Curl, plume, curl, curl, plume, curl, and out to the corner. All right, I'm going to break my threads because I want to kind of show you an overview of it here as I move the camera over what I've just stitched. And this space, I easily could have made these smaller than I did, but just for time's sake, I made them a little bit bigger. There's nothing wrong with the size that I did. They're perfectly fine for your quilt. You just have to decide how skinny of a feather you want to make, because of course you're committing to time. The skinnier you go, the longer it's going to take. Okay, so take a look at this next one. You're going to recognize it. Here's a square, and I've got my arcs, and I've got my diagonals. All right, so we'll do the spineless. I'm not going to go all the way around because this will take a little time. So we're going to do the long arm feather. And I'm just going to go back and forth. And I may need to put a couple on one side before I go back to the bottom, just to fill the space. So I'm worried about that spine that I stitched, but I'm not like married to it. You know, I want to give it a little respect, but I don't have to be. It doesn't. It's not going to really drive much, other than I'm just aiming for that area. And out. Okay, so let's see that. And I would just keep going, but you get the idea. All right, and now let's go over to this next one. So you're gonna see this next one. So here's, I'm gonna just come down the seam. So here's the block, and I've got that diagonal seam, and let's work our way up it. I'm gonna do that curled feather that we did already. Curl, kick out, curl, and I'm gonna go up to a point, down the spine, and now do the other side. Curl, kick out, curl, kick out, curl. Okay, so do you see my mistake? Let's talk about my mistake. So I should have made this curl a little bit bigger to touch in here. So I have some choices. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put a little feather like that. All right, so let me break my threads, because I want you to see, even though I made a mistake, that it's not that big of a deal. So we get all bunched up about, you know, it has to be exactly the same. There has to be the same amount of plumes on one side of the spine as it does on the other. Well, no, or not. You know, you're not a computer. So your quilting has soul to it because a human touched it. So be okay with the small changes. If it really does bother you, pre-mark all of these plumes and then just follow your marks. You can do that as well. So I hope that was helpful to you. We are going to talk a little bit more about feathers. I'll tell you what next month's program is going to be, but do play with some squares. Just draw some squares on paper and some diagonal registration lines and sit in front of the TV and make your family wonder what the heck you're doing over there on the couch doodling away with feathers. So I do want to thank our sponsor, APQS. APQS Quilt Forever. They are 100% handcrafted in Iowa. They're loved the world over, and they come with a lifetime warranty. We really appreciate all that APQS does for us. And if you are interested in a long arm machine, contact your local dealer or your local APQS store and sign up for a test drive. Take the machine for a test drive and see how they feel to you. I think that you will love them just as much as I do. So thank you so much, APQS. Okay, so we are going to be nosy with Mary Lou McCormick, who's one of my favorites, and she has a lovely studio in a new home that she just moved into, that she has some beautiful views out of a window. And it's not this humongous space, it's just the right space for her, and it's just perfect. So let's take a look at Mary Lou. We did record this earlier, so I'll be in a different outfit, but I'll be right back after we watch Mary Lou. Thanks. Hi, Mary Lou. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Angela. It's a real pleasure. Thank you.
It's good to see you.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. Now, where are you located?
I live in Centerville, Ohio, on a golf course of all places.
Where is Centerville, Ohio?
Just south of Dayton.
Okay, perfect, perfect. And so, how long have you had a long arm machine?
I've had my long arm for about 7 years.
7 years, fantastic. All right, so you're in your quilting studio. Is it like a extra bedroom? What is it?
They call it a bonus room. It's a big long room, and then it leads into a sort of a guest bedroom without a closet or a window.
Okay. All right. Well, let's be nosy. If you would turn the camera around so we can see what you got.
Okay.
All right. So I see you have APQS Lucy.
Yes.
All right. And then what size table is that?
This is a 12-foot table. I'll sort of show it to you from, I have to come upstairs to get here. So here's sort of a view at the top of the stairs. So you can see it's a real long room.
Yeah.
But it's a 12-foot table. I love it.
And it fits in there nicely.
It does, although it's difficult to get behind it.
Oh, well,
just barely enough room, but it's pretty good.
You have a computerized system, so you probably don't have to get behind there all that often.
No, not unless I need to move something, but otherwise it's great.
Okay, so I'm seeing something I got to ask about, Mary Lou. You have some sort of, it looks like a prayer bench, but I know what
is that?
You're talking about my little bench down
Yeah,
there.
what is that?
Well, okay, so I'm short. I'm only 5'1",
Uh-huh.
drinking, and we have my Lucy at its lowest level.
Okay.
And even then, I have a hard time when I have to lean over to get to the further part of my quilt top. I just get really bad back pain. So my husband built me this little bench, and I can just pull it out.
All right, so tilt the camera down so we can see what you're there, and it's carpeted.
Yes, he carpeted it.
Oh, what a nice hubby.
Isn't he a sweetie? So I just pull it out and stand on it when I want to use it, and then I just sort of kick it under when I'm done.
Well, that is better than quilting in heels.
Yes.
Well, that's fantastic. And you have all those windows. So you're showing us what's under the, what do you store under your table?
Okay, so if you see those things, I don't know if you can read it. It says Pragma bed. I've got material in all of those, so I
Uh-huh.
keep material there. And then under here, I have some plastic things where I have more material.
Right.
And then I got these nifty little drawers here. They pull out, and I got those at the Container Store.
Oh, I love that store.
Yeah, they're full of material. And then I have some more in my other room that are full of more material and thread.
Okay. What's on the end of your legs on your table, on your Lucy table? I see something black on the bottom of the table.
I've got these lights. See the light?
Oh, okay. So it's like some kind of like a patio umbrella stand?
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yes. And so there's one at each end of the table, and it gives me really great light when I'm quilting.
Did your hubby do that for you too?
No, we bought it from a friend.
Oh, that's a great idea. I had never thought about using patio tables like that. Okay, so tell me why there's a Snoopy hanging in the middle of the room from the ceiling.
I'm a big Peanuts fan, and one of my sons gave me that for Christmas about 3 years ago.
And is it literally just hanging from the middle of the room from the ceiling?
No, it's hanging on a little, actually a piece of thread attached to my light pole.
Okay, got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay, so you've got two big windows over there. And
Yeah.
so is this where you piece?
This is where I do most of my piecing. I can look out at the little pond out there, and over here, I can sort of see more of the golf course. So I have lots of nice light that comes in, and I do my sewing here, and I do my cutting right behind that.
Okay. It's kind of breaking up on us a little. Maybe if you hold the camera a little steadier, it's getting real kind of crunchy.
Okay,
Okay, so that's where you piece.
right.
And what's that on the wall behind your piecing area?
I'm not quite sure what. I have a whole bunch of signs
Okay.
that I that I like to just put up and see when I'm quilting. And,
Yeah.
uh, stuff that some friends have given me,
Uh-huh. Are,
and the big black thing is a decline bench, which I'm no longer allowed to use, so I'll be giving
oh,
that.
I see. Okay. And so you've got all of your quilting rulers and other notions for the machine over there on that wall.
Yes, I have some rulers on my cutting table, and then I have rulers on like 3 or 4 different walls. I sort of went bananas on rulers.
Yeah, I understand. I'm totally with you. You got to. They're way too fun.
They are.
They are. They are. All right. Well, if you would turn the camera around so we can see you again, because I want to know about 3 things you would recommend to your bestie.
Okay, the 3 best things I would recommend would be, first of all, read a real book, one that you hold in your hands, not an ebook, and don't listen to an audiobook. Not that you shouldn't, but read a real book once in a while. The second thing I would recommend is write a note to a friend and send it snail mail, because it's nice to get some real mail instead of all the ads and
Yeah.
stuff you get. And my third thing would be, um, try whole bunches of new things all the time with your quilting so that you get better.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to leap, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I see that a lot, Mary Lou, where people get really bunched up and they have this perfectionist monster that lives in their head. And they feel like if the first time they don't do it, it's not right, then they are terrible and they won't get better and it's not worth trying. And
Yeah.
And it's a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And there's joy in the process.
Exactly. And I love that about it. So I
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing your space with us, Mary Lou. You are a lucky girl. I love especially all of that bright natural light you've got flooding your space. That's fantastic.
yeah, it's wonderful. Thanks a lot, Angela.
Okay, talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Isn't it fun seeing someone else's space and how they have it all organized and how they have it set up? Thank you so much, Mary Lou, for letting us be nosy and take a looky-loo tour of your space. I really appreciate you giving us the wonderful tour of your space. So you've got some great things set up, and I love the view especially. We did have some questions come in about quilting feathers inside a square, and one of those was, what about a domestic machine? Your domestic is going to be the path. Everything is going to be exactly the same as you would do on a stand-up machine. It's just that you have the luxury of being able to rotate or turn the quilt. So if you're more comfortable doing feathers, from south to north, you can rotate your quilt and do that even though you're doing the four sides of a square, as opposed to a stand-up quilter that has to, figure out how to do it right side up and upside down. As far as tools or batting or thread or needles, I mean, all of that is going to be pretty much the same. You'll have a different needle, of course, for your sit-down machine than you would for a stand-up machine. But as far as thread goes, as far as path, as far as technique, as far as shape, all of that is exactly the same sit-down versus stand-up. So it all translates. And I have to say, I started out on my grandma's Singer way back when. I had to put index cards over the feed dogs because the feed dogs wouldn't lower, and I had to tape index cards down to keep the feed dogs from chewing up the fabric so I could get a flow. So you can make it work absolutely on a sit-down machine. Were there other questions, Rachel, that came in?
They were wondering what app you're using.
Oh, the app. So I'm drawing on I'm a Mac girl, and I'm drawing on a paint program that works with Mac. It's called Paintbrush. You likely have one already on your machine, especially if you have a PC. I think you'll find Paint or something like that on a PC. Just any kind of paint program. And then as far as how I draw, I'm using a tablet. It's a graphic tablet, so it's just a glorified mouse pad, and then the mouse itself is in the shape of a pin. It's a USB so that I can draw easily instead of drawing with a mouse. Drawing with a mouse is really hard. This is much easier on me, so I think I got that for like $60 or something. It's a Wacom bamboo tablet, just a home user kind of tablet. So look for that because it's nice. I'm a digital girl. I'm a gadget girl. I like to draw on the screen. I do it on paper too, but I find myself on the screen doing a lot. So all right, so we have lots of new things that we're bringing into the shop. We've been super busy over the last 3 months just kind of reimagining what we could bring to you to help you. And one of those things that we hadn't had before, because we'd only been selling batting off the roll, was prepackaged bats. So it's my favorite thing for this month. So we've got all different kinds of bats. This is a Tuscany, a Hobbs Tuscany, and it is a 100% cotton bat in all the different sizes. And then we also have the 80-20. So this is also Hobbs, it's heirloom. So it's 80% cotton, 20% polyester, and we have it in the natural color as well as the black. And I use the black when I'm doing darker backing fabrics because if the batting gets kind of tufted out the back for some reason, so if my needle dulls and it starts to pull a little bit of that batting out the back side, if I'm using a black bat with a dark backing, you won't notice it, you won't see that. So, and by the way, if you ever do see that, where you see little tufts of batting being pulled out the back side, the most common reason for that would be a dull needle. So just change your needle. Okay, so I did want to ask that if you would take the time to review us on Google, I would sincerely appreciate it. It helps the Google machine find us so that others can discover us as well. I read every single review, and I thank you so much for all of your support. It helps our little business grow, and it helps us be able to bring more things to you. So I would appreciate if you would share this with someone that you think would find it valuable and helpful. That would be the best way to support a small business in this time, as well as the best way to kind of show me and thank me for the time that we take to bring you all the information. So I really appreciate it. If you'd head over to Google, that'd be awesome. Okay, so on our Quilted Joy Clubhouse group, we put out a call each month for people to post a photo of a quilt that is unquilted and that they want to see how I would quilt it if it were my quilt. So I pick one, I take the photo, and I draw on the picture, and we break down kind of my thought process so you can get inside my brain and see how I figure out how to read a quilt and how to determine what to put on the quilt if it were my quilt. So Claudia posted a quilt on our Facebook group, and I like squealed when I saw it. Okay, Claudia. So Claudia, here's the quilt. Claudia posted this quilt, and she's like, yeah, and the blocks are 16 inches. I'm like, I know. So this was a quilt that I did for Fons and Porter. It was pieced by Diane Bergen, and I quilted it, and we had it in the magazine. I think it was in 2020. I want to say it was in the January. Oh, wait, I have it right here. Okay, yeah, January. Okay, so there's the magazine, and it's in the centerfold. So there you go. All right, so Claudia, I totally know this quilt. So let's take a look at how I would quilt it if it were my quilt. Now, what I did on the quilt that I took, that I just showed you, the one that I took to the show, to show how to put it together, I did it all over edge to edge. And mainly that was because a lot of the fabrics that I chose wouldn't show custom quilting. But you have chosen fabrics for your version that will absolutely show custom quilting. So let's take a look at how we would break down that quilt for custom quilting. So here I've got Claudia's quilt called up, and I just want to kind of walk you through my brain. Might be a scary thing, but it'll give you a sense of how I look at a quilt. So I'm going to zoom in, and this kind of secondary block that forms where all the blocks come together, I find really, really interesting. And so I want to kind of play with these shapes, and I always love it when things kind of duck under other things. So the first thing that I started thinking about was all of these kind of squares on point, and how these little flying geese guys, really there should be a nose to them, right, that comes out there. Let me make my size of my line here just a little bit smaller. So there should be a nose, yeah, that comes out on this flying geese right here, on each of those. So I started playing with that and started thinking about that, and I thought, okay, if I can start out and make a square on point here, and then I'm just going to wiggle out to the next square on point to here, and you'll see why I wiggled in a minute. I'm going to go up to here, and I'm going to put a little beak on that square so that he's not cut off. So he has an overlapping point to his square. And now I'm going to attack these little flying geese. Put a little beak on that goose. Come over here, put a little beak on that goose, and come down. And then I'm going to trace over that, come down, trace over that, come down, little beak on him, goose, beak, goose, beak, goose. So I'm making my way around this block. Oop, okay, so I shouldn't have gone so far there. I was talking to you and not thinking. I should have stopped right here. I'm going to come out this way, and now I can go down and across and up this way, beak, 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 trace over, and head back. Okay, so then I started thinking about how I could add some depth to this. And I thought, well, if I just add little wiggle lines to every other ring, and these are like little spaghetti worms, refrigerator coils, just little, and what I'm doing is I'm imagining a miter on each of these little corners so that when I wiggle my little wiggle worm, he stays inside that miter. All right, so I thought that was pretty cool, and I thought, well, what about if it extended out? So that would mean that these also get the little wormy spaghetti lines too. But of course, I don't want to go back and break my thread and redo these, you know, to fill all this in, because I want to be able to do it in one continuous path. But I really like that look. So let's look at how we can get this look in one continuous path. All right, so I'm going to start again here. I'm going to do a little wormy line up to here. I'm going to do my beak. And now when I finish this guy, he's the one that gets the worms. So I'm going to come back, put my worms in, come back, keep on trucking. Beak, 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 come back, worms. All right, and then I'm just going to keep on going. So that, when I get to the end, I'm going to, oh, come back, worms. Now I'm getting fast here. I'm going to come up this way, beak, 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 come back, worms. And then when I get to here, this is my opportunity to come back to that first worm I started and finish that interior. And I would mark these miters so that you can tell where your worms should get smaller. Okay, so that is kind of what I came up with. Let's take a look at what that looks like so that you can see that. Okay, so here's Claudia, here's what I've got as far as bringing those secondary patterns out for those secondary blocks. So let's zoom in a little bit. And so there's that secondary block that we just did. And so now I'm going to direct my attention towards the main focus, the main block. Let me zoom out. And when I direct my attention towards the main block, first what I'm kind of thinking about and looking at is I need some kind of entry point. I need a magic portal. I need a way to get into that block as a continuous path. So I'm looking at the block strategically to see where could I drop in. So I'm just going to change my color here because I want you to think about this too. Because this is part of reading a quilt is kind of deciding and seeing where you could enter. So these points right here where it touches the sashing, these points are good portals, good entry points. I could drop into the block on either of those. Those would be nice. Another alternative would be any of these corners here. Those would also work. All right, let me keep going. So any of these spaces would be good ones to drop in. All right, so if I am interested in dropping in to this portal, I somehow have to travel here. I somehow have to get there. And that's when I started thinking, well, maybe when I'm doing my little wormies, when I hit my worm right here, let me circle it in red, when my little worm, when he gets right here, or when I'm traveling up that goose, when I hit that spot, I could drop in with a straight line to my portal. Do my block, and then leave and return. So do my block, 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 leave and return, and then continue on with the design we just did. Okay, so I've identified how I'm going to get into the space. So let's take a look at that because I want you to see. So I've identified how I'm going to get into the block. So I've got these little chevrons where I can pop in and enter that little magic portal on each of my blocks. But now let's talk about how I'm actually going to do this block. And so there's a lot of really beautiful flowers in each of these center squares, and this is a 16-inch block. And what I want to do is pull in that feather in a square thing that we just talked about. So I know in the center of these squares, I'm going to mark my diagonal, and I'm going to put the feather design we just talked about inside the square. So the first thing I need to do is get into the center of my star. So I'm just going to do a curve here, and I'm going to go to this point here, and I'm going to put a leaf, and I'm going to put a leaf, and now I'm going to do my curl, feather, curl, feather, curl, feather. This is all familiar to you from earlier, right? Curl, feather, curl, feather, curl, feather, curl, feather. Okay, so now I've got my center done. Now I'm going to focus on this part here. And what I want to do is just a simple crosshatch. So I'm actually going to go up this ditch to here, and I'm going to put a little leaf in to mimic what I just did on this star. So a little leaf shape, up the ditch, over to here, another little leaf shape, down the ditch, and now I'm going to crosshatch it. So I'm going to go up to this corner. I'm going to travel down the ditch I just did. Notice how the piecing makes a direct diagonal right here, and I can tie those together to there. Notice how this piecing point makes a talks to the same bisecting line as that one does. So down to here, there, there. I'm going to travel over, and I'm going to do my diagonal, and then head back down the ditch. And now I'm ready to go over to here. So my leaf, put a little vein in it, hop over, leaf, 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 ditch, leaf, ditch, crosshatch. Leaf, vein, leaf, leaf, crosshatch. First I ditch it. Anytime you're going to do big diagonals, I should have put a leaf there. Anytime you're going to do big diagonals, you want to make sure that you ditch it so your diagonal does not knock it out of skew. Leaf, vein, leaf, 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 ditch, leaf, ditch, crosshatch. And by the way, if you want to know, oh, and then I need to go back to where I started, and I need to put a vein in and then exit. So that vein comes first and then I exit, because I can't exit and put a vein in because then the vein would be in the opposite way. If you want to know more about crosshatching, by the way, we have a whole series of tutorials on our website. They're in the Learning Center. And so you can go into, it's all about rulers, because likely you'll need to pull out a straight edge ruler to do these straight lines. But you can look at how cross-hatching, the path, I just showed it to you as well, but it's a diagram in there. So explore our Learning Center, because I think you'll find some good information. Okay, so let's take a look at how this looks, Claudia, all together. So let me pull this down. So there we go. That's the way, and I love how the cross-hatching, I'm going to zoom in so that people can see it a little bit better and kind of take you around. So I love the way the cross-hatching really gives some structure to the quilt. And I love the way the fabrics that you picked will highlight all of that straight line cross-hatching and all of the feather work inside the actual stars will be a little forgiving because of your feather pattern on those fabrics in the center of your stars, but all the other fabrics will really show off these little wormy designs and how they kind of duck back under. So I hope that you like, I'm going to zoom out so we can see it larger now. Oop, I went in instead of out. I hope that you like the way that this looks, Claudia. Of course, you can do whatever you want on your quilt, but this is the way I would quilt it if it were my quilt, Claudia, and you did a fabulous job, and I hope that you like that breakdown. I hope that you enjoyed that. So I would encourage you to go over and go to the Quilted Joy Clubhouse. We have some really great, the nicest, friendliest, most helpful quilters who gather in there, and they actually post pictures of things that they're working on. So it's always so fun to see what people are working on in the clubhouse. So let's take a look at what's been posted over the last month or so. So here's some things that have been posted. So Amy, she made this bag for her husband, and it's got all of the state parks. I don't know if you've seen that fabric before, but it's got all the state parks, so it's a little travel bag. And it was like one of the first bags that she's done, and she really did a great job. And then don't you love that, even that all over pattern on those stars, just a beautiful job. Love that texture on that quilt. And then Jane did this wonderful modern quilt with all of these sampler blocks in it. Beautiful layout. I love the colors, and she's trying to decide how to quilt it. So pop over to the clubhouse and give her your opinions and share with her how you would look at it, and then pay attention, because hopefully Jane will post, no pressure Jane, hopefully Jane will post what she's done later so we can see what decisions she made. Athena posted this one. I love it on the. Don't you love how she posted on the bicycle? So just a simple, sweet 9 patch with a meander. I really love your binding, Athena. I love how you made your binding scrappy, and it's all of those plaids just really are fun to look at. Now, Faye's quilt we chose for a previous a design roundtable, and broke down how I would quilt it, and she actually used the flower design that I showed you how to make in the center of each of those patches. So go check that quilt out, Faye. You did a great job. Now, Marianne, she posted this. So Marianne, she comes into the shop, and we have another lady who's Colleen, and Colleen goes to the state of Washington, and their row by row for a bunch of the shops in the state of Washington were rows that were meant to go together to make a giant state of Washington with great things in here. There's a lighthouse, and there's whales, and a kayaker, and the Seattle, what is that? The Needle, thank you. And then I was going to call it a tower, but it's bigger than a tower. And windmills, and so all this great stuff from the state of Washington. And so Marianne decided to make it as well. So there's the windmills, and she played so much with all these applique and had so much fun with her machine. So that was great to see. Alyssa posted this one. She did this all over edge to edge on this one, really striking with the black against those patches with all the different scrappy colors. Really great job, Alyssa. And Melinda posted this sampler quilt. Samplers are always kind of scary because there's so much going on and so many different blocks to think about. And Melinda did a wonderful job. Lots of lovely swirly quilting on that. Cheryl posted this one, and she mimicked those leaf shapes in her quilting to kind of fill out the negative space in the center of her quilt. So she, kind of nodded her head to the applique and pulled it into the quilting side of the quilt. Michael posted this one. I love this, how Michael used very square outlines there in the setting squares, and then did the free motion designs in the 4 blocks around the center. So a great balance between free motion and more structured work. Great job, Michael. And Dawn, this one blows me away. So I think she said this was a 9-year quilt. These are all leaders and enders. I don't know how big these little pieces are, but I'm guessing they're tiny, because 9 years is a lot of time and a lot of leaders and enders, but I absolutely love this. It's a riot of color, and I'm sure that it has memories of all of the quilts she's made over the last 9 years. So thank you so much for posting all of your quilts in the clubhouse. I love seeing them, and I do look at all of them. Okay, so if you would tune in next month on July the 1st at 1 o'clock, here's what we're going to talk about. I want to show you the 5 best feather plumes for beginners. The 5 best beginning quilting feathers. Sometimes we look at like a traditional Amish feather, and those are the worst to try at the beginning because there's lots of complications with an Amish feather, and I think you would frustrate yourself. So I want to show you the 5 that I would start with if you're just getting into feather work. So that's going to be on Wednesday, July the 1st at 1 o'clock Eastern, so that I hope that you join us, and do join us on social. We are on Facebook. We have a Facebook page as well as our Facebook group, and you can join us over on Instagram. On Instagram, I generally post some of the day in the life, some of the more personal photos of what's going on in my little world. And then on YouTube, any of the tutorials that we have or helpful videos and all of our past Clubhouse recordings, you can all find that on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next month on July the 1st. Thanks. See ya.